While Michael Myers takes the Halloween of 2023 off to establish his new Halloween cinematic universe, and no, I am not kidding about that this time, both producer Jason Blum and director David Gordon Green have moved on this spooky season to another rebooted trilogy of sequels, this time for William Friedkin's 50-year-old horror classic, with Ellen Burstyn returning at age 90 to star, or rather make an extended cameo, in The Exorcist Believer. And despite the $400 million investment from Universal and Blumhouse on The Exorcist rights, their new trilogy has gotten off to a rocky start at the box office, up against the unlikely duo of Taylor Swift and Martin Scorsese, and now landing on VOD 2 weeks after theaters before Halloween is even over. But angry horror fans, as well as the angry spirit of William Friedkin, can be comforted to know that he and William Peter Blatty didn't live to see this latest failed follow-up, after they had to suffer through the first and perhaps the very worst of the Exorcist sequels way back in 1977, with Exorcist II: The Heretic. With Friedkin and Blatty too busy with lawsuits against Warner Brothers and each other for profit and credit over the first Exorcist, the second Exorcist would enlist the directorial eye of the British auteur of Deliverance and Excalibur, John Boorman. Despite Boorman having passed on making the first movie for finding it, quote, rather repulsive, and having just come off directing a red-diapered Sean Connery in the baffling sci-fi epic Zardoz. Still, with Boorman bringing back both Linda Blair and Max von Sydow alongside an award-winning cast of newcomers, then surely he would make a sequel that would also have audiences fleeing from the theater like the first movie. Not out of fear this time, but rather out of anger towards the Warner Brothers executives. According to this hilarious story from William Friedkin about some studio heads who dropped in on an Exorcist II screening to gauge the public's rather poor opinion of the film.
A guy stood up in the audience. The people who made this piece of shit are in this room! And somebody else said, Where are they? These guys got up. The heads of the studio. They get outside, no cars, and they were chased down the street.
So The Heretic would drop off after its huge opening weekend at the box office to end up with a financial haul and a critical reception far behind that of The Exorcist, with William Peter Blatty laughing alongside the audience at the sequel's New York premiere, and William Friedkin calling the few minutes he saw a stupid mess made by a dumb guy with a demented mind. Now that audiences are saying much the same thing about the latest Exorcist follow-up, it's time for me to finally tackle one of the allegedly worst sequels ever made to what is considered the scariest movie ever made. And yes, JoBlo subscribers, having just seen Exorcist Believer myself on VOD before recording this review, I can indeed confirm that this film's final act, with all the different faiths getting together to perform the exorcism, is the exact same plot device that was used in the final act of the Exorcist parody movie I did for my show 5 years ago, Repossessed.
You've got to bring everyone together.
So congratulations to you, David Gordon Green. You've somehow given me a newfound reappreciation for Repossessed. Oh dear God, what am I saying? What an excellent day for some alcoholism, as we wash down our trick-or-treat candy with some holy water for the awfully good drinking game. Take a shot or drink as the credits open like the first one did over the sounds of tribal wailing, which to the blind ear sounds like Yoko Ono doing a cover of Pink Floyd's The Great Gig in the Sky after taking an edible dipped in ayahuasca. Then the film opens in South America, amidst an exorcism performed by our new hero priest of this story, Father Philip Lamont, played by the legendary Richard Burton.
I heal the sick.
Silenzio! Silenzio!
Who only took this role to pay for his second divorce from Elizabeth Taylor, and is often seen sweating from his off-screen alcoholism that he enabled frequently on the set. Well, turns out using vodka instead of holy water doesn't really work when this demon woman knocks over a shelf of candles that burns down the hut around them, as well as herself. Though her visibly transparent ghost hands should be just fine. Do not despair, people. I'm sure the good Lord will see fit to save this poor woman from the flames. Oh, shit, never mind. Sorry the exorcism didn't work. Make sure you build the Vatican. Don't tell them I fucked up again. Bye! Father Lamont is called all the way over to the Vatican, where he meets with his holiest higher up, the Cardinal, Wednesdays at 9 after The Equalizer on CBS, played by Casablanca actor Paul Henreid in his final on-screen role, who has tasked Lamont with investigating the mysterious circumstances behind the death of their mutual friend and fellow priest, Father Lancaster Marin. Now that word of Marin's exorcism in America has gotten out and led to accusations against him of heresy against the church.
Some go so far as to suggest that he was a Satanist.
Satan has become an embarrassment to our progressive views.
Well, seeing how poorly that dialogue has aged in the past half-century, no wonder Father Lamont is having a crisis of faith against a God that will not allow him to stop drunkenly fucking up exorcisms.
Today, wherever I look, I see only evil. Evil. Evil is gaining.
But Lamont must summon the strength to investigate his old friend's death and fly to New York City, the new home of the innocent girl whose body was freed from Satan by Father Marin, Regan McNeil, played again by the now teenage Linda Blair, who's been moved to New York by her actress mother Chris into a swanky mirrored apartment alongside one of Chris's assistants from the first movie, Sharon Spencer, played again by Kitty Wynn, because Chris McNeil is busy overseas with filming another movie.
She feels guilty. Away all the time.
But just some things your mother didn't have time to do before she went on location.
Which is just a fancy way of saying that Ellen Burstyn refused to come back. They would have to pay her an obscene amount of money to bring her back to this franchise for a useless cameo. But when is that gonna ever happen?
It's because I'm not a member of the damn patriarchy.
Not to worry though, her place is taken by another Oscar-winning actress, Louise Fletcher, trading in her Nurse Ratched costume to play a far less evil mental health doctor named Jean Tuscan, who treats Regan inside of this children's psychiatric institute that's designed with even more mirrors and windows that makes it look like a Stanley Kubrick wet dream, yet cannot get this girl to remember what happened to her on that fateful night back in '73.
I remember being very sick and having nightmares.
Those bad dreams are still inside you.
There's nothing wrong with me. Nothing wrong with me. Nothing wrong with me.
So now that Father Lamont has flown in to get Regan to remember that night himself to clear Father Marin's name, Dr. Tuscan breaks out a revolutionary technology to access Regan's mind that begins this movie's descent into batshit insanity.
It can put us in a deep state of hypnosis, and then we could look at those bad dreams together.
In other words, this walkie-talkie with a set of blinking lights attached to it basically works like that Elon Musk Neuralink bullshit crossed over with the plot of Inception. This hypnosync machine makes our actors roll their eyes back into their head, just like they did when they first read this movie's script, and helps them view a flashback to the first movie's exorcism. With Max von Sydow back under the old age makeup to return as Father Marin, Linda Blair now replaced by a body double after refusing to undergo that demon makeup again, and Jason Miller telling the producers to fuck off until they call him back for the only good Exorcist sequel.
Father, please, bring her back.
I'm sure you baffled viewers out there are making the same face as Richard Burton right now. Dr. Tuscan is getting a psychic heart massage from demonic Regan at the same time Father Marin is having his heart attack in 1973, while she's in sync with Father Marin in an effect straight out of a Queen music video, while Max von Sydow recreating his death from the first movie now looks more like old age Martin Short faking a heart attack in Clifford, the sequel to the scariest movie ever made, ladies and gentlemen.
What happened?
It was horrible. Utterly horrible. And fascinating.
Well, the viewers of this movie surely do agree with you, Richard, but can you not stare into the camera? Richard! Can someone please sober him up? I think he's been getting too deep into the holy water again.
Utterly horrible.
Father Lamont soon finds himself in a panic when Regan does a drawing of him with flames next to his face.
The flames. They're getting bigger.
Flames?
On the side of my face.
which I guess leads him and Dr. Tuscan down to a burning box in the basement that he tries to put out by hitting it with a wooden crutch that will just end up catching fire itself, while she stops in place with a fire extinguisher to notice that his face next to the spreading fire kind of looks like this picture Reagan drew of him. It's hard to imagine a movie that's so padded out with dull exposition dialogue would still manage to make no coherent sense. We next find Sharon flying back over to the McNeil's old home in Georgetown, D.C. to give Father Lamont a guided tour of the haunted house.
I couldn't bear to be near her afterwards.
You will now.
I stayed away. 200 years going out of my mind.
I'm sorry, where did all this backstory for this character come from, who had so little to do with the main plot of the first movie? Are we gonna find out that she and that German housekeeper guy secretly had a baby together? Then it's back to the Mindsync machine so that Lamont can analyze Reagan's visions in her sleep that she's been getting from her old pal Captain Howdy of Father Merrin's younger days as a missionary in Africa, which later provided the basis for Rennie Harlan and Paul Schrader's failed prequels.
This young boy, they need his help against the locust swarm.
Merrin observes a young boy named Kokumo, no relation to the Beach Boys song, while he's trying to make a swarm of locusts flee from his village and ends up getting swarmed by them. Then Merrin finding out the boy is possessed by the very same demon who'd later take over Reagan, who despite identifying as the devil last time, is actually one of his legion of demonic minions, known by the name that you readers of the original Exorcist novel already know.
I am Pazuzu.
Pazuzu. Pazuzu.
Even with Pazuzu's silly name and even sillier form as a locust puppet that's posing for the Silence of the Lambs poster, he can still wreak some demonic damage upon these fleeing townspeople, while Father Merrin climbs up with Kokumo to a holy temple for his exorcism. After Merrin's exorcism on Kokumo turns the boy back into his regular form as R&B superstar Seal, Father Lamont flies alongside Pazuzu to showcase these quite impressive sets that stand in for Africa, as well as reveal the location of the now adult Kokumo, played by the one and only James Earl Jones, dressed like he's going to play Mufasa a third time, now in the Lion King Broadway musical. I'm sorry, did I just see multiple Tony Award winner James Earl Jones turning into a fucking leopard?
He jumped right at me.
Well, why the hell didn't Father Merrin call upon this guy last time to assist him and Damien Karras in Reagan's exorcism?
Your mother sucks cocks in hell.
Speaking of Reagan, Linda Blair is one of the few sane things about this movie, as it's nice to see Reagan having a semi-normal childhood after all the shit Pazuzu put her body through last time, alongside such kids at this psychiatric hospital as a non-verbal autistic girl named Sandra, played by a pre-Different Strokes Dana Plato. That's right, people. Reagan McNeil now has the power to make autistic children speak.
She's talking.
I'm sure this movie will handle autism as a plot point way better than The Predator did.
What's the matter with you? I was possessed by a demon. Oh, it's okay. He's gone.
After all the trauma that she endured in that possession, Reagan just mentioned it to this little girl with the casualness of mentioning her broken hand from a rafting accident. Show this little girl your stomach scars next. I'm sure she'll really be making some noise. Even funnier is when Reagan and Lamont meet up inside a history museum to discuss some secret information about Father Merrin that I'm sure had William Peter Blatty laughing extra hard at that premiere.
Do priests believe in ESP?
The French priest tried to shut down, thought that we'd all come together eventually in some sort of mental telepathy. Father Merrin himself believed that with modern scientific research it could happen quite soon.
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
Yes, indeed. The devout Father Lancaster Merrin was secretly a huge fan of ESP, the so-called Sixth Sense, which has since been debunked as pseudoscience bullshit after a bunch of bored housewives got into it back in the early 70s. That's just about as ludicrous as finding out Father Karras was also a Pulitzer-winning playwright in his downtime. Actually, John Boorman had the unfortunate dishonor of contracting a fungal infection on set called San Joaquin Valley fever. and had to hand over much of the direction and rewrites to Boorman's future Excalibur co-writer Rosbo Pallenberg, who's listed in the credits as a creative associate. Well, it's certainly creative to have this scene of Lamont searching in Africa for the grown-up Kokumo being intercut with Regan McNeil while she is busy tap dancing in her high school's dance recital? Is this real life? I am just as baffled as Linda Blair herself was that she's being asked to tap dance for a sequel to The Exorcist.
John Boorman comes to me and he said, I think Regan should tap dance. What?
Back in Africa, the townspeople begin accusing Father Lamont of being a Satanist himself and cast the first stone at his head. That is felt by poor Regan while she's mentally synced with him back in America, then feeling every single rock after that hitting Lamont's body, before she falls off the stage and hopefully gets attended to by Dr. Sam Loomis, who knows a thing or two about children haunted by evil.
You know where he is, Cookie Woman.
This is pure New Age insanity that's far away from the advice that Stanley Kubrick gave to his friend John Boorman of how a successful Exorcist sequel would have to be more graphic and scarier than the original, while Boorman went the opposite direction to make a sequel that would serve as a, quote, riposte to the original film's ugliness and darkness that was positive and about good. We'll just ask David Gordon Green how well that went over with his Exorcist sequel, because without Friedkin's realistic ugliness or Blatty's darkly humorous dialogue, this sequel is 2 hours of boring exposition or pointless travel sequences, with our old awfully good pal, the late great Ned Beatty, making a pointless cameo as Burton's friendly pilot.
I know every holy place in Africa. Ecumenical Edwards, they call me. It's nice to know you, Father.
The only reason that I can think Ned Beatty is here for 3 minutes tops is that John Boorman wanted his next movie with him to be less strenuous on his butthole than Deliverance was. Hell, even Repossessed made way better usage of Ned Beatty than this, though the same can't be said for his poor little dog, Foo-Foo. Finally, Lamont walks into a cave to find the one they call Kokumo, which I presume translates into stupid locust costume. Look at poor James Earl here, looking less like Darth Vader, and more like he's dressed for Halloween as Guillermo del Toro's Jiminy Cricket.
Prove your faith, Kosuba.
If Pazuzu comes for you, I will spit a leopard.
I'm sure him spitting out this cherry tomato instead of a leopard will work just as good. I think the Vatican spending the Lord's money to send priests out on Indiana Jones adventures is probably not going to help their PR image.
Can I help you?
Then Lamont looks up to find Kokumo, now dressed up in his other Halloween costume as Sherman Klump, to lead the father through his own scientific institute, filled to the brim with, what else? Locust.
Evil swarm sweeps relentlessly over the earth. Evil breeding evil by contact.
Looks like Phil Donahue throwing up in a tuba.
I just think John Boorman got high watching a Locust documentary on PBS one night and rewrote it into the script. As it happens that the noise of these locust wings flying together is what's been summoning Pazuzu onto the earth. Because at this point, why the fuck wouldn't it be?
She has been evolved to resist the rushing of the wings. We like to call her the Good Locust.
Yes, I am such a big fan of Freddie Highmore's fantastic performance on The Good Locust.
I am a locust, Dr. Kokumo. I am a locust. While Father Lamont gets back from Africa, now dressed like a pimp, Regan is escaping from the psychiatric hospital while sneaking out the synchronizer, and the two reunite at the History Museum where he tells her that Regan has the same psychic powers that Kokumo does after Pazuzu left both of their bodies.
You have a great gift. Keep it from evil.
And the ghost of Father Marin telepathically tells Lamont that Regan and Kokumo signify a new breed of humanity where everyone has telepathic powers. I wish that I was kidding!
You must take my place. She is precious, and I entrust her to you.
Lamont then suddenly walks out onto the street with Reagan chasing right after him while still wearing her nightgown, as the two take a train over to DC, followed by a bus ride over to the abandoned McNeil house for one last satanic confrontation, with Richard Burton yet again drunkenly looking off screen like he just heard that the wet bar on set just ran dry.
Leave her alone.
She belongs to me.
Get going. The girl has to get home.
And I need to get over to the local watering hole so I can have a drinking contest alongside Russell Crowe as the Pope's exorcist. Dr. Tusken and Sharon Spencer chase after Lamont and Reagan in spite of the many satanically induced distractions that keep holding up their trip, while Lamont and Reagan arrive at the old house to be greeted with what fucking else? More locusts! And while the newly evil Sharon escapes the wrecked cab to set herself on fire like the possessed woman at the start of the movie, Lamont and Reagan are met with the now individualized form of the Pazuzu-possessed Reagan.
He's chosen me. Pazuzu's Reagan is the only Reagan.
Who instead takes the more lascivious form of sexy evil Reagan, in a questionable scene of erotica alongside young Linda Blair that, according to her, was supposed to be way more explicit in its original storyboarded form.
It was my makeup people. We have something to bring to your attention, that there's a new storyboard of the seduction scene. It is going to be presented, but it's extremely offensive. I went to somebody and said, let me be perfectly clear, ain't gonna happen.
17 years old, ladies and gentlemen, as directed by somebody who thought that the original Exorcist portrayed child torture. How is it that Exorcist 2 is way more exploitative of Linda Blair's sexuality than Rick James ever was? Pazuzu's swarm of locusts descends upon the McNeil house and begins to break it in two, while Lamont fights with sexy evil Reagan to tear the demon's heart out with his hands.
You must pluck out her evil heart.
Thus confirming Father Lamont as the next DLC character for Mortal Kombat 1. As for Reagan, she helps the Locust flee from her home by making the same motion that Kakumo made to swing that noise-making thingy towards the Locust, even though she doesn't have a noise-making thingy herself, and she instead just looks like an audience member of the Arsenio Hall show. But whatever, Reagan is now free of Pazuzu for good, the badly burnt Sharon Spencer is given spiritual clemency by Lamont right before she dies, and Dr. Gene Tusken struggles as much as the audience is at understanding what the hell she and we have just fucking watched.
I understand now. The world won't. Not yet.
Well, here we are, 46 years later, and I'm sad to say that the world has gotten no closer to understanding what this movie was about. Even after John Boorman went and made extensive re-edits to this film, right after its terrible reception even resulted in some riots breaking out in theaters, with the 110-minute director's recut version released on VHS in the 80s and included on the Shout Factory Blu-ray, which now ends with Reagan emerging from the crumbled house and meeting eyes with Dr. Tusken outside before fading to white, with the audience having to presume that Father Lamont just died off-screen of cirrhosis of the liver, much like Richard Burton himself. And while the evil of Pazuzu may have been defeated, the evil of David Gordon Green was still yet to come in this franchise's future.
Did the power of Christ compel you?
The two genuinely great things about Exorcist 2 are the dreamlike cinematography from William A. Fraker of Rosemary's Baby, and the fantastic score from the legendary Ennio Morricone that replaces Mike Oldfield's famous Tubular Bells theme here, with Morricone even reincorporating Reagan's theme from Exorcist 2 into his score for Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, which won the late great maestro his only competitive Oscar for Best Original Score. Plus, Exorcist 2 has an unlikely fan in its corner, Martin fucking Scorsese. Yes, the man who helped beat Exorcist Believer out of the box office listed Exorcist 2 as one of his guilty pleasures, that he even prefers over the first Exorcist.
What?
With all due respect to Mr. Scorsese, I personally think Exorcist 2 is still a confused mess that profoundly misunderstands everything that made the first film work and contains absolutely zero scares. But credit is due to John Boorman for at least making a sequel that didn't just cynically redo the first one all over again. And in spite of its many dull stretches, there's enough amusing insanity here to keep bad movie fans entertained for one of the most baffling blunders in horror movie history. And since John Boorman is still alive in 2023 at the age of 90, maybe the angry spirit of William Friedkin can make like the demon in the new Exorcist and take over the bodies of two Exorcist sequel directors at the same time.
Fuck them and the horse they rode in on.
On the enjoyment continuum scale from Pazuzu to Kokumo, Exorcist 2 The Heretic will have you questioning your faith in this franchise right before Exorcist 3 ends up renewing it, and the power of Christ compels it into a 5 out of 10. I think Richard Burton can sum up my final thoughts way better than I can.
It was horrible. Utterly horrible.
And fascinating.
I'm Jesse Shade for JoBlo.com, and thanks again for watching this special Halloween edition of our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the JoBlo Originals channel. Tell all your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company that appreciates all of your support. And we all hope that you've had a happy Halloween this year, even after that new Exorcist sequel let us all down with that useless cameo at the end.
Is that you?
Yes, Mother, it's me, your daughter, Richard Burton.
Fuck them all!
With Shark Week having come and gone to bring in Bafo ratings for the Discovery Channel once more, the public's appetite for shark-related entertainment is just as bloodthirsty as ever, including the latest sequel starring Jason Statham that sees the brute bald Brit again hunting down a prehistoric megalodon shark in Meg 2: The Trench. And with the Meg 2 holding up well at the box office, even with its expected bad reviews, we might be seeing the Meg franchise now taking the place of another increasingly ridiculous shark franchise that began it all in 1975 with Steven Spielberg's revolutionary blockbuster, Jaws, and ended it all 12 years later in 1987 with the infamously baffling sequel, Jaws: The Revenge. With Universal Pictures in financial freefall after the bombing of Howard the Duck, CEO Sid Sheinberg decided to once more tap the well of the Jaws franchise for a fourth entry that would help promote the new Jaws ride over at Universal Studios, while also ignoring the events of the critically derided Jaws 3D, with Lorraine Gary returning on behalf of her husband Sid Sheinberg as Ellen Brody, now facing that smiling son of a bitch herself after Roy Scheider refused to return as Chief Brody, with the immortal quote, "Satan himself could not get me to do Jaws Part 4.
Because I don't intend to go through that hell again!
And after the sequel was rushed into production to meet its summer 1987 release date, with Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3 director Joseph Sargent now replacing Spielberg as director, Jaws: The Revenge opened wide only to get blown up at the box office against a little film called RoboCop, and bite down on a ripe 0% from the critics, with audiences so upset over the film's lackluster ending that Universal reshot it for European and home video distribution. But trust me, I am going to have plenty to say about this ending very soon. But for now, since I've already reviewed Jaws 3 for this show back in 2016, I would say the time is finally right to find out how this supposedly even worse sequel closed up the beaches of Amity Island for good. And yes, JoBlo subscribers, you may best know this particular sequel for its often parodied tagline.
This time, it's personal.
So yeah, the events of those last two movies, that didn't mean shit to anybody. But this time though, it's personal. It means something. It is for real. It's so personal we don't even need to properly use commas in our tagline, because we've already blown up the goddamn commas alongside the shark. But again, I will have much more to say about this movie's ending later. We're gonna need a bigger boat and a bigger keg before we chum down this round of the awfully good drinking game. Take a shot or drink as the film opens just as the last three did, from the POV of a hungry shark swimming the water to the tune of John Williams' iconic theme song, or as I like to call it, the theme from those 90s Corn Pops commercials.
I gotta have my pops.
Where should this new shark be hunting but in the waters of Amity Island after the family of the now deceased Chief Martin Brody, namely his widowed wife, Ellen, played again by Lorraine Gary, and his now grown-up son, Sean, played here by Mitchell Anderson, while his big brother Martin chats with them over the phone as they prepare for the holidays.
We're putting out cookies and a bottle of beer for Santa.
And yes, Jaws the Revenge does count as a Christmas movie, as per the McLean Catwoman scale of summer blockbusters set at Christmas time.
Your grandmother is a slave driver. Hey, ask the big doctor about his job. Tough life, the Bahamian beach.
Will you shut the fuck up?
Not only is Sean Brody newly engaged, but he's also following in his dad's footsteps as a deputy for the Amity Police Department, who have hung up his dad's portrait on the wall in honor of him, with Roy Scheider making the same face of disgust he made when offered the scripts for Jaws 3 and 4. But while Deputy Sean has to go float out on a boat to dislodge a log that stuck out on a buoy, little does he know that he's now at the mercy of the dreaded Joneses, who is emitting blood from his mouth already before he even chomps down on the Sean's arm, tucks Sean's arm underneath his shirt and spills some fake blood onto him to pretend he chomped his arm. But Sean's cries for help cannot be heard over the children's choir at this Christmas pageant. I'm kidding, they can hear him just fine. They just want this character to die already as much as I do. And with another bout of choppy editing, the shark has begun his bloody revenge against the Brody family, and Ellen identifies her son's remains the next day.
I thought you'd want them.
Oh hell yeah, Ellen Brody's gonna use her son's gun and shoot off a round of bullets into the ocean in his honor, just like his father would have wanted. Michael flies back home from his research job in the Bahamas to attend his brother's funeral, now played not by Dennis Quaid, but Lance Guest of Halloween 2 and The Last Starfighter, and reunites not just with his mom, but also Mrs. Kintner of the first movie, who's apparently inducted Mrs. Brody into their Grieving Mothers Club. As nice as it is to see her and other Jaws alumni popping back up, it's tragic to realize that this character who had a tragically murdered child is sharing a scene here with Michael's daughter Thea, played by soon-to-be tragically murdered child star Judith Barcy.
Uncle Sean is dead, you know. Will he ever come back?
Whose fictional father here would serve as one of the girl's pallbearers a year after this film. Yeah.
It came for him.
What?
It waited all this time and it came for him.
What? Oh.
Okay, either Mama Brody is getting too deep into the QAnon forums again, or this sequel is really going to be predicated on the idea of a shark who may or may not be related to the dead sharks of Jaws 1 and 2, acting on a personal vendetta that a shark cannot have against the family of Martin Brody, despite his wife and kids having nothing to do with those sharks' deaths, and Martin Brody himself having died a year and a half prior from, I'm not kidding, a fear-induced heart attack.
Sharks don't commit murder. They don't pick out a person.
It picked out Sean. It killed your father.
Dad died from a heart attack.
He died from fear. The fear of it killed him.
You heard that right. The man who obviously overcame his fear of water and sharks in the first two films ended up getting killed off screen by his fear of water and sharks. What an underwhelming way to go for one of cinema's most likable lead heroes. Next thing you're gonna tell me that Quint actually turned out to be a Skrull. After Ellen breaks out into laughter at Sean's funeral, while having one of her many flashbacks to events from the far better first film that she wasn't even around to witness, Michael decides his mom could use some R&R by flying back with him and the family to spend the Christmas holiday at the very last place that a victim of shark-related trauma should go. The Bahamas, baby! Yes, come swim in our big, beautiful oceans, the sights and sounds of which will only exacerbate your recent trauma and give you nightmares of being attacked by the same shark that killed your poor innocent son. Don't worry though, you can let out all of your sobs of grief while you go parasailing. This is when the legendary Michael Caine appears, in one of the many paycheck roles he's gladly accepted over his prestigious career, in the role of the Brody's friendly pilot, Hoagie, Alfred Pennyworth, Ebenezer Scrooge, Austin Powers' dad, and Hoagie.
What makes the plane go up and down?
Oh, that's easy. The houses get bigger.
And just wait till you find out who's playing Michael's scientific research buddy over in the Bahamas.
Michael! What the hell are you doing down there?
Oh no, David Diggs as Sebastian the Crab? No, that voice belongs to Mario Van Peebles, a few years before New Jack City would break him out as both actor and director, here playing this movie's Matt Hooper equivalent, Jake McKay.
You come back acting like a zombie. It's Christmas Eve. We're working overtime because of you. Hey!
Dude!
Dude.
With Van Peebles improvising most of his character's dialogue, as much as he obviously did for his shaky Jamaican accent.
We got a big fish down here, man.
Hey, man, I didn't mean to,
Move your ass, man. Michael!
Macaroni. Jamaica got the shark sled team! And though Michael constantly reassures his mother that there's no way the shark can swim to the Bahamas, Mother Brody remains ever vigilant against the threat coming for her family, even as she finds love with this mysterious pilot named Jersey Michael Caine. Hoagie.
Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that maybe there are other possibilities.
I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
And since it'll be a while before this shark can somehow swim from New England to the Bahamas without interruption over 2 to 3 days, let us instead focus now on the blossoming love between Ellen and Hoagie, with Michael Caine proving charming as ever in a throwaway role that allows him to tell all the colorful anecdotes about his adventurous life that he didn't get to tell to Master Wayne.
He said, I've left it in town. So I said, what are we going to do?
I was picked up by this tribe of headhunters, and they took me to see their chief.
Although the most colorful story that Michael Caine has about this movie is this legendary quote that's more fondly remembered than the movie itself.
One of the worst pictures I did was a picture, I think it was called Jaws 4.
The Revenge.
The Revenge, yeah. I was paid $1 million for 2 weeks' work. And with that money, I bought her the house. Someone said to me, I saw that Jaws 4. He said, it stinks.
It stinks.
I said, I haven't seen it. I said, but I've seen the house it bought my mother, and it's marvelous.
As for Lorraine Gary, for an actress who came out of an 8-year retirement for this movie on behalf of her CEO husband and would never act again after this, she holds her own well against Sir Michael in a performance that's reminiscent of what Hollywood's doing nowadays with such franchises as Scream, Halloween, and The Exorcist, re-examining the trauma that's experienced by these female survivors from famous horror movies. But just as Ellen dances her grief away at a local Junkaroo festival, Michael and Jake find themselves visited by you-know-who.
Holy shit!
What's wrong?
So smart, me heck mustache.
Yes, folks, this movie is implying that Ellen Brody has a straight-up psychic link with this shark, which by the way looks particularly terrible in this sequel, even for a franchise that has never had much luck working with animatronic sharks. That thing is shedding enough microplastics into the ocean to kill off an entire species of fish. But much like the first film shot around the terrible-looking shark by focusing more on the excellent character and dialogue, Jaws 4 now focuses back on the far less compelling romance between Ellen and Hoagie, while they attend a casino with Michael, Jake, and their respective wives, Carla, played by Karen Young, and Louisa, played by Lynn Whitfield, where Michael seems uncomfortable with the prospect of Hoagie slipping his mom some of his 12-inch meat.
Mind if I cut in? Please, the world would be a better place if more sons danced with their mothers.
And this movie would be a better film if some sharks were to bust in from the ceiling right now onto the dance floor to start tearing people apart, limb from limb, and oh, who am I kidding? The majority of this movie is, in the words of a more recent Spielberg movie,
boring as shit.
Most of the plot has Michael Brody acting petulantly upset over Michael Caine potentially being his new stepdaddy, while also bitching with his wife as she juggles her own career as an artist, preparing her new sculpture to be unveiled at the nearby.
Boring as shit.
Hey.
Don't come any closer.
I've always wanted to make love to an angry welder. I've dreamed of nothing else since I was a small boy.
I desperately want to make love to a schoolboy.
Oh my god, can we please focus our attention back towards the killer shark coming for you boring bastards, who we have just confirmed has telekinetic mind powers, the ability to pick out and track down its victims like the Terminator, and can swim all the way from the cold waters of New England to the warm oceans of the Bahamas in only a few days? I feel like that should be our top priority here, not Michael Brody's weird welding fetish. As for Mike's obsession with Hoagie, that plot point is far more fleshed out when you read the novelization for Jaws the Revenge, which is based off an earlier script draft and differs hugely from the final movie. Not only do we find out in this book that Hoagie's last name is Newcomb, but those boating trips he keeps making through the film are off to transport drugs for a local drug lord, because Hoagie is secretly working with the DEA to bring the drug baron down after his daughter died from overdosing on the baron's cocaine, as opposed to his own stash of more cocaine. And while the novel ends amazingly with said drug baron falling from Hoagie's plane to get eaten up by the shark, the actual movie cuts this entire drug-running storyline down to only one line of dialogue.
What do you do when you're not flying people?
I deliver laundry.
So you're telling me that Michael Caine missed out on winning his first Oscar so he could film this turd of a movie, yet you can't even give him the awesome plotline where he goes back into badass Get Carter mode alongside a killer shark to bring down a drug smuggling ring that killed his daughter?
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Fuck! And even worse, they also cut out the explanation for the great white shark's vengeance-driven massacre, that the shark is being telekinetically controlled by a local witch doctor who has a bone to pick against the Brodies named Papa Jock. Not Papa John's, Papa Jock. It's not hard to see why that probably racist storyline also got deleted in the final movie to one line of dialogue.
Come on, you can't believe that voodoo.
But come on, how about this movie drops the formalities for once and gives us the drug-running, voodoo-powered version of Jaws 4 we all deserved, instead of yet again nostalgia baiting back to an already referenced scene from the first movie, now done between Michael and his young daughter.
You don't know what it did to me. You look just like your father. Do you remember when you guys used to imitate him?
How can I not remember, Mrs. Brody? They just did that scene for us not 1 minute ago. This makes the Xfinity commercial that reunited Henry Thomas and E.T. look downright dignified by comparison. And the next scene, where the shark tries wrenching Michael out of a yellow submarine, is yet again calling back to the original, where Matt Hooper got attacked inside the cage. But now done far less suspensefully with a shark that looks so fake, you can even see the gears underneath it in some 4x3 formatted versions of the film. Here's John. Oh, damn it! My excellent impression of Jack Nicholson in The Shining was foiled by this stupid ladder. Damn you, Michael Brody! I'll make your family pay for what your father did to my shark ancestors!
I'll get you, bitch!
But while Michael and Jake go back out to hunt for the shark the next day, Carla Brody is introducing her new sculpture at a ceremony next to the local beach. Yeah, I'm sure this'll go well. Where who should be speaking at the microphone but Mario Van Peebles' father, Melvin Van Peebles, himself a revolutionary black actor and director who collaborated often with his son before his death in 2021, as the local mayor who awkwardly attempts to tell some jokes.
Get to the point, man! As my wife now says.
Mario Van Peebles is off screen somewhere, just pissed off that his dad decided that this role was the right time to introduce his Black Borat impression. Don't worry though, Richard Pryor is standing by as the next act, ready to deliver his far funnier impression of Sacha Baron Cohen's The Dictator. After a full hour of terminally boring backstory, we finally get near awfully good territory in the film's final half hour, with Michael and Jake's kids nearly meeting their end in the shark's mouth when it swims to the beach to feast on a human banana split.
Quick, Carla, try scaring the shark off by doing your Seagull impression.
Now it's finally up to Ellen Brody to suit up in her laser-powered shoulder pads and use her complete inexperience of either sailing or weaponry to take down the shark herself with some more nostalgia baiting.
Come and get me, you son of a bitch.
You son of a... You son of a bitch.
While Michael attends to his traumatized family, realizing that not telling his family about the killer shark on their tail was probably a bad idea.
You knew? And you didn't tell us?
Where is my mother?
Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us?
What did you do?
Are we sure that we just can't bring Michael's wife along to scream at a frequency that'll blow up this shark without any help from explosives? Michael and Jake fly out with Hoagie to catch up with Ellen and help her defeat the shark, with some even more nonsense scientific explanations.
No, it's gonna come from the plane. It's attracted to the electromagnetic impulse of the metal on it.
Get the bloody hell out of here! Complain! Complain! Oh, shit!
Hey, now at least we know why they make you turn off your phones before your plane takes off, to prevent magnetically induced shark attacks in mid-air. Thankfully, Hoagie somehow makes it out of the sinking plane with his oil and peppers intact.
It wasn't easy, believe me. The breath on that thing.
Thanks to his instantly drip-drying shirt made of the same technology as Marty McFly's jacket. So Michael and Jake now plan to have the shark swallow an electrical transmitter that will drive the shark crazy. But just as Jake is able to get it into its belly, the shark is somehow able to float above the surface of the ocean and snatch Jake up into its titular jaws, while Michael screams out the name of his secret male lover, his oceanic research partner. This is when we finally reach one of the most insane climaxes in all of bad movie history, as Michael cranks up the transmitter inside the shark's belly and gives it the ability to goddamn roar. Roar! Yes, the shark just roared, people, and not just any roar. The same roar as the monster's pet dragon, which was used before that in a Tom and Jerry cartoon, and which the filmmakers had to use because the sound editor refused to make them a sound for a shark roaring, because he rightfully thought that idea was fucking stupid. Then Ellen has one last flashback to both her dead son and husband before steering the boat ahead into the shark's belly. And this is where you will get either one of two endings. If you saw the American theatrical cut that's aired on TV, it ends the same way that the novelization and the NES tie-in video game do. The shark is stabbed, he bleeds out to death, and with one final roar sinks to the bottom of the ocean. After which we cut to Ellen saying farewell to her son before flying back out with Jake's now widowed family, and Michael Caine flies his new sweetheart out on his Muckle plane. The end. Or at least that was the end. Until Universal Pictures saw how pissed off audiences were at this week's Sauce ending. So they proceeded to call the cast and crew back 5 days after the movie hit American theaters to shoot new footage for the ending to be shown in European theaters and on home video, with this new ending now having the stab shark going out in the same explosive fashion as the last 3 sharks did. Despite no discernible explanation as to why the shark just blew the fuck up out of nowhere. No, it was not connected to the transmitter inside the shark's belly. No, Michael Caine did not call up Batman to bomb the shark with some of his bat shark repellent.
Holy sardine!
The shark really did just turn into a rubber bath toy for a millisecond before spontaneously combusting in a bloody mess, in much the same fashion that Chief Brody's heart also spontaneously combusted from shark trauma. Then we find our heroes swimming in front of an obvious blue backdrop straight out of The Truman Show to discover that Jake McKay has somehow survived his profusely bleeding shark wounds. Take that, guy from The Revenant.
What the hell are you doing alive, huh? I tell you, Uncle Jake's equipment don't crap on it. From now on, we gotta study snails, eh?
By all means, let's get back to studying snails. They're the one aquatic sea animal that moves as slow as this movie did. Then the rest of the ending proceeds as normal, with Ellen saying goodbye to her son with an obvious line of ADR.
Take good care of Jake!
I will.
Which now means that Jake's family is flying back to America with Ellen, even while Jake is left alone in the Bahamas to fight for his life in the hospital for the next few months. But while this amazingly terrible ending is now the official ending on Blu-ray and streaming, Universal has yet to release the deleted post-credits scene, which revealed that Matt Hooper was inside this fake shark all along.
Damn you!
Thus setting up Richard Dreyfuss's triumphant return to the role of Matt Hooper 23 years later in his cameo for Piranha 3D. But hey, still a better career choice for Richard Dreyfuss than doing Jaws the Revenge. If it weren't for this memorably bananas climax, Jaws the Revenge would rightfully be forgotten as one of the most boring and unnecessary sequels in movie history, which does nothing to necessitate making another movie about the Brody family and waste the energetic efforts of both Michael Caine and Mario Van Peebles to add some life here. Unless you want to see Spielberg's cinematic legacy get further spit on so soon after Jurassic World and Indiana Jones let us down, then stick with the still classic original, the decent Jaws sequel, or the amusingly bad 3D threequel before you swim into this failure of a franchise finale. But hey, with Hollywood so eager to revisit classic horror movies these days, we just may see the 90-year-old Michael Caine and 86-year-old Lorraine Gary reuniting to fend off a fishy new resident of their nursing home in Jaws: The Retirement. This time, it's pathetic.
It stinks.
On the enjoyableness continuum scale from Bull to Bruce, Jaws: The Revenge makes you wish those killer whales would specifically attack the yachts of the Universal executives who greenlit this piece of crap, and shows me the way to go home to a 4 out of 10. So Jaws gets 3 sequels, yet Spielberg gets not a single one for the adventures of Tintin. Truly, there is no justice in this world. I'm Jesse Shade for JoBlo.com, and thanks again for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the JoBlo Originals channel. Tell all your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company that appreciates all of your support. And if this movie could have really used something, it would surely be the late great Paul Reubens as Pee Wee Herman, dubbing his scream over this shark's roar.
Mad Dog!
2023 may have been a terrible year for the movie business, but it was at least an excellent year for movies themselves. While original films like Barbie and Oppenheimer have broken box office records and dominated the online discourse, once reliable franchises have been flaming out with audiences one after the other, and the threat of superhero fatigue is now more undeniable than ever. But neither the Avengers or the Justice League suffered as hard in 2023 as another cinematic super team made up of the biggest names in action movies, as Stallone and Statham team up for their hopefully final adventure, The Expendables 4, or as it was stupidly titled in its advertising, Expendables. 9 long years have passed since the last Expendables sequel tanked with critics and audiences, after getting leaked online a week early and toning down the violence for a PG-13 rating, a mistake that Stallone promised not to repeat for what he touted to be his final performance as Barney Ross, so as to hand over the franchise's reins at the ripe age of 77 to Jason Statham as Lee Christmas. So surely the cast lineup for Sly's farewell movie would be the most badass one to date. Iko Uwais from The Raid, Tony Jaa from Ong Bak, 50 Cent from those escape plan movies with Stallone, I guess, Megan Fox from Michael Bay's Transformers and Ninja Turtles movies where she hardly did any action herself, and Andy Garcia from the high-octane action classic When a Man Loves a Woman. This Jet Li and Arnold free cast lineup was certainly underwhelming, as well as unable to promote the film due to the Hollywood strikes, leading to the fourth Expendables receiving the worst critical and box office reception of the series on the worst box office weekend of 2023, thus marking a sad end for these titans of action cinema. So why wait another few years to tear this flick apart when I can immediately discuss what could very well be one of this year's worst movies, as well as a new low for the careers of its legendary cast? You heard that right, JoBlo subscribers. Expendables 4 could very well be worse for Dolph Lundgren than Masters of the Universe, worse for Jason Statham than that Uwe Boll movie he did, and even worse for Sylvester Stallone than Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
Mommy, I don't want to be changed!
If you thought Arnold was laughing hard over tricking Stallone into doing that movie, he was likely laughing even harder when he saw how this movie did at the box office without him.
Arnold.
Time to gather a crew of the hardest lickers out there for this expendable round of the awfully good drinking game. Take a shot or drink as we open in the deserts of Libya at Gaddafi's old chemical plant, aka the strain of medical marijuana that Stallone smokes for his arthritis, where a murderous general spends some much-needed family time inside of his ornate home when his guards outside are bombarded by laughably bad CGI helicopters, as well as some real-looking tanks, being driven by the underlings of this sequel's villainous mercenary, Swarto Ramat, played by Iko Uwais.
Where is General Fizan?
But why should we continue on the momentum of that exciting opening when we can cut over to the New Orleans home turf of the leader of the Expendables, Barney Ross, with Stallone already looking tired as he rides out on this bike he stole from the set of Cobra and heads over to the home of Sweet Christmas. Are you kidding me with that green screen? Did Stallone film part of his role at the same time as his cameo for Guardians of the Galaxy 3? Anyway, he's at the home of his second-in-command, Jason Statham, as Lee Christmas. Yes, that's still his character's name, who between movies has got himself a new girlfriend.
Oh, look at me! I'm English! I'm avoidant! I don't like to argue!
Unfortunately, she happens to be Megan Fox, in the role of Gina, who despite acting like one of the Real Housewives, actually happens to be a CIA agent who works under Barney as a member of the Expendables.
You might be my boss?
She's an expendable, Christmas.
And I thought Kelsey Grammer in the last movie was fucked up casting. Megan Fox, of all people, getting cast alongside all these action icons is the cinema equivalent of hiring Gary Cherone to sing lead for Van Halen.
Fuck you!
But more about her later, because Barney needs Christmas to intervene down at their local watering hole so he can obtain his beloved skull ring back from behind the bar, where it's amusingly been placed on a wooden dildo.
That's unacceptable.
Striking resemblance.
After Barney lost the ring in a thumb wrestling match,
You used to be strong. What happened?
Things change.
because he is way too old to make a remake of Over the Top, against an angry biker by the appropriate name of Jumbo Shrimp.
The other guy, second guy.
Yeah, that's me. I'm Jumbo Shrimp. The name actually refers to my penis.
So Barney gives him a pair of brass knuckles so that he can handle the whoop-ass and witty wisecracks.
You lost to Santa's helper? Bite size, Yoda, Dinky.
While Barney sits back because he claims to have thrown out his back.
Since when?
A few weeks ago, I can't even lift a fork.
And if you folks have seen the recent Sly documentary on Netflix, you know that Stallone has actually done some serious damage to his body, trying to act and direct in the first Expendables way back in 2010.
Bronchitis and thrush and fractured neck. I never fully recovered from Expendables 1. I've never been sane. Never.
So this probably explains why he's only got one fight scene in this sequel, up against a bartender played by Eddie Hall, aka the world's strongest man.
Bring it!
I'm sorry, but no. There's no way that a 77-year-old man, even at the peak physical shape that Stallone has, would be able to lift the world's literally strongest man up over his back. I can't buy that any more than I could buy Morgan Freeman and Clint Eastwood fighting off an army of ninjas.
It's a miracle. It just went away. I like spending time with you.
Next time, take me on a pony ride.
Well, actually, I really did just snap my hip into two after lifting that guy over my head. So you better call me an ambulance while I begin to proceed screaming in horrific agony.
Barney and Lee meet up at HQ with the rest of the returning Expendables. Gunner, played by the great Dolph Lundgren, now donning long blonde locks for his role in the Aquaman sequel that he keeps insisting is just a wig.
She likes that 70s look, you know, the Farrah Fawcett thing.
Toll Road, the demolitions expert played by MMA fighter Randy Couture, who's still telling that unfunny monologue about his cauliflower ear from the first movie.
We all know I wrestled in college. Common injury associated with that sport.
Common affliction in that sport is contusions to the ear.
And as for Terry Crews as Caesar, it's not hard to tell from Terry's reduced role in Expendables 3, as well as his 2018 testimony in front of Congress about his sexual assault charges towards Stallone's former agent, that bridges have been pretty well burnt between him and franchise co-producer Avi Lerner.
Called my manager, asked him to drop my case for me to be in the fourth installment. If I didn't, there would be trouble.
And since Jet Li and Arnold are also gone, since they were barely doing anything in this franchise anyway, we now have rapper and entrepreneur plus actor Curtis Jackson, better known as 50 Cent, trading his bike for a gun in the role of Easy Day.
Hey, it's Easy Day. Good man, ex-Special Forces.
Whose silly name actually comes from the old Navy SEAL saying,
Only easy day was yesterday.
And though Mr. Jackson has improved as an actor and social media personality over the past couple of decades, none of that improvement is seen here in his low-energy performance.
I got a prescription scope.
Well, Hawkeyes, remember this face. Don't shoot it by accident.
What?
It's as if the guy who shot him 9 times was specifically aiming for his tongue. As for Antonio Banderas as the hyperactive Galgo from the last movie, he's off filming Indiana Jones 5. So they've instead replaced him with his son, Galan.
I am Galan. That's Galgo's son.
Played by Jacob Scipio from Bad Boys for Life. And as for Harrison Ford replacing Bruce Willis in the last film as the team's CIA liaison, he's also off filming Indiana Jones 5. So now Andy Garcia is stopping by for a paycheck as Barney's old pal in the CIA named Marsh.
Are they hanging?
Gravity's setting in.
Keep them tucked.
Who, in between his dick jokes, orders the team to take out Ramat and his men before they access the nuclear codes inside this general's safe to steal them for a rogue CIA agent who goes by the name of Ocelot.
Some will say Ocelot's a ghost that Barney created to cover his own ass. Ocelot exists, and Barney will bury him someday.
So our team flies off to Libya in their Expendaplane, where Stallone and Statham get back into the friendly banter between them. That's been one of this franchise's consistently good aspects. While Antonio Banderas Jr. is regaling the rest of the team in the back with a hilarious tale of getting pissed on by a girl during sex. I'm not kidding.
She squats down on top of you and releases her bladder.
You look like the type who has had one before.
As if that wasn't horrifying enough, the next scene has Ramat having killed the general's wife off screen, and then killing the general's son with a bullet to the head. Golden shower jokes? Children getting killed. If only this horrific editing was the worst this film had to offer, because for a franchise that has never had particularly good CGI, this shit looks inexcusably bad for a theatrically released film in 2023. All the actors look like they were shot at different times at different places. 50 Cent tossing this bad guy back and forth looks like Bam Bam tossing his dad around on the Flintstones. And did Puss in Boots Jr. here just make a fucking Mean Girls reference?
Get in, losers! We're going shopping!
Yep, he sure did. How much lower can this movie possibly sink? And even though Stallone is the guy who got this Expendables idea rolling in the first place, you can probably suspect from his second billing in the credits, his complete lack of writing credit on the screenplay, and Stallone nearly quitting the sequel due to the same creative differences that led to his exit from Creed 3, that Barney Ross is going to be sitting out this big fight scene to provide air support from above, when his plane is hit with a missile and then a bullet from Ramat's rifle.
Damn it, Barney!
And Barney throws out one last dying order to Christmas.
Get the detonators, please! That's an order!
Before entering the same franchise heaven as Rocky and Rambo. But try as Christmas does to run back in slow-mo through time to save Barney's life, it's too late. With Christmas and his teammates examining the charred remains of their former leader with his skull ring still intact, and Dolph Lundgren nowhere to be seen because he's off reusing the same footage from earlier of him running from behind. Was Dolph busy that day filming his Zaxby's commercial?
Now I must eat you.
Is that Dolph Lundgren?
Look, aside from the Terry Crews drama, I understand why Stallone would want to tap out of this series as he nears his 80s. The man's got 2 far more successful TV shows over at Paramount Plus to make in his golden years instead. But could we not give his character a more dignified send-off than a funeral at his favorite bar where Barney's charred hand is displayed with the middle finger extended on behalf of Stallone to this franchise? While Don't Fear the Reaper is being played by a shitty cover band,
Barney hated cover bands.
and the extras out on this dance floor look like they're zombies who have wandered from the set of Shaun of the Dead. Christmas gets himself canceled from the team by Marsh after disobeying Barney's dying orders to complete the mission, which means that the obvious successor to lead the Expendables will now be Dolph Lundgren.
Gina.
Oh, you're shitting me. Megan Fox is gonna take Stallone's place instead of Stallone's real-life friend, who has tearfully said in a recent book that Sly casting him in this franchise saved his career, and who just overcame a nearly fatal bout with kidney cancer. Dolph dressed himself up like Joe Bob Briggs for nothing.
Nothing!
So now the unemployed Christmas must find himself a new job out in today's gig economy.
Private security detail, a social media influencer.
And lands one immediately as the security guard for an obnoxious Instagram influencer who looks like a 12-year-old boy dressed as an adult with a beard made out of his dad's pubic hair.
That's
Have some respect for the ladies. Respect the ladies. I respect them, all right.
This feels like a scene from the third Crank movie that Statham should have made instead of Expendables 4. Moving on so that Lee Christmas can break into his girlfriend's safe to find himself a declassified file on his dead boss, with Gina catching him in the act to explain that the file has clues to the secret identity of Ocelot.
I want in.
Oh, I'm sorry. You weren't invited.
After they get into a sexy spy fight that's basically a slightly naughtier version of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is kind of awkward to watch after Megan Fox just admitted her own history of abusive relationships, Lee and Gina have themselves a makeup bang, and he gives her his trusty army knife, so that he can track her down with a surveillance device while she and the rest of the crew flies over to a CIA black site, alongside yet another new female member of the crew by the name of Lash.
Oh, it's way bigger than that, darling.
No, that's a Chinese bird.
Played by Levy Tran, an actress who we all remember being mentioned for the cast of that canceled female Expendables spin-off. Michelle Yeoh, Sigourney Weaver, Michelle Rodriguez, and some woman from the MacGyver reboot. Meanwhile, Christmas is boating off to Thailand to track down a retired expendable who was one of Barney's closest associates in his past.
I'm looking for a man named Desha.
Desha is long gone.
Played by one of the few actual action superstars in this cast, Tony Jaa, who insists that he's since given up his old life of murder and warmongering in exchange for a spiritual life of peace.
But I put that man behind me. There's only so many times you can kill a man. You become numb to pain, to joy, and to love.
Blah, blah, blah. We've heard all this before from John Rambo in his past 5 movies, so I'm sure Tony Jaa will come around when it's time to convenience the plot. I don't know, just a hunch. So Christmas and Desha catch their boat up with a ship containing Ramat and his terrorist associates that they've disguised to look like an American aircraft carrier. Right after Megan Fox and her Expendables parachute onto this badly CGI'd boat, only to find themselves immediately getting ambushed by the terrorist.
What a fucking mess this turned out to be.
Somebody knew we were coming, both times.
This is just a cheap gimmick to keep most of our Expendables sidelined from the action, so that Statham can handle most of these henchmen himself, while Marsh is also separated from the team, and yet he's somehow able to still grab onto that railing despite his character being unconscious. Does everyone on this film crew not give as much of a shit as Andy Garcia clearly doesn't? Now, I would say that Statham at least does handle his part of the movie quite well, still dishing out whoop-ass and wisecracks in his late 50s.
That could go off in your hand.
But considering that this was the third Statham movie to come out this year, it's not that special, which you shouldn't be saying about a film where Jason Statham rides a motorcycle on a boat that has a gun turret attached to the front, which would make it impossible to steer the bike and aim the gun at the same time, but whatever. This shoddy green screen behind Statham can make anything look possible. How is it that the piracy PSA that Arnold did with Jackie Chan had better green screen than this? But Tony Jaa joining up with Statham with his newly painted raccoon eyes helps this movie briefly live up to the concept of seeing action movie stars doing cool shit together. And Iko Uwais' villainous turn helps contribute some memorable martial arts mastery to the movie that makes up for his generic villainous dialogue, which his limited English can do little to work with.
It's your call whether the Expendables need to live up to their namesake or not.
I don't have the authority.
I know you don't.
As for the rest of the Expendables, they're off trying to escape their prison.
It's gotta get wet.
What?
Anybody gotta pee?
By having Toll Road take a piss on a grate so they can open it up and make their escape, which is what wakes Galan up from his mournful vow of silence that he's had for the past 45 minutes of the movie because of his previously established love for golden showers.
Because he does like golden showers.
It's like the film literally pissed away what little was left of its dignity. So finally, our Expendables all re-team up back inside the ship to find out what they're going to do about the active nuclear bomb inside the ship's belly that Ramat plans to sail into the Russian Far East to create an international incident that will kick off World War III and hopefully give Christopher Nolan an idea to make an Oppenheimer sequel. So what does our team do to distract the guards and kick off a firefight?
I don't know what you heard about me.
Why, playing a song from none other than 50 Cent himself, even though 50 Cent is not, in fact, playing himself, and not even one of his newer songs, but PIMP, which is off of his debut album from 20 years ago. What next? Are we gonna have Megan Fox put the guards to sleep by playing the audiobook of her book of poems? But ultimately, this sequel has the exact same flaws that have weakened all of these Expendables movies. The quick-cut editing and the horribly rendered digital effects, which completely undercut the old-school action movie appeal. And Dolph Lundgren, the only core action star from the 80s left in this cast, is now given an embarrassing subplot where his newly sober lifestyle gets in the way of his shooting expertise. And he takes a huge swig of He-Man juice during this final gunfight. Hooray! I'm supposed to be happy that the lifelong alcoholic is back to his debilitating habits. Actually, the final fight between Christmas and Swarto Ramat is probably the closest that any of Iko Uwais' fight scenes come to having the same energy as his incredible work in The Raid.
You're gonna give me the kill switch and we're gonna end all this. Come and get it, hero.
Or at least until Statham finally brings him down with an axe he borrowed from Gunner that he calls a Traumahawk.
Is that my Traumahawk?
Yes, it's actually called a Traumahawk, and you can actually buy it online just in time for the holidays. But now with Ramat killed off, that must mean that the secret identity of Ocelot is none other than the man who always plays villains in every other movie he does.
Hello, bye. Bye.
How could you, Andy Garcia? And I don't mean you secretly being the villain, I mean you saying that god-awful NSYNC joke. So Christmas yet again breaks off with the rest of the team as they sail away in Deisha's boat.
May my sacrifice count!
While he runs to turn the ship away from its nuclear collision.
Right here, Marsh.
Ho, ho, ho!
Oh really, movie? You wait until the final 15 minutes for Andy Garcia to finally break out the holiday-related jokes about Statham's funny last name? Yeah, this is about as much of a Christmas movie as Die Hard. A good day to Die Hard.
Look what Santa brought me.
But what's this? Marsh gets shot into a bloody mess by this helicopter flown by none other than...
You almost fucking killed me! You're welcome! Are you crazy? Could have killed me! You're welcome!
the heavenly green screen spirit of Stallone the White. Yes, those of you who saw his Netflix documentary know that Stallone has always had a thing about ending his characters' stories on a happy note. Which is why Rocky survived his bout with cancer, and Rambo somehow survived single-handedly taking on a Mexican cartel.
I so believe that we don't see our heroes die. I'm in the hope business, and I just hate sad endings, sorry.
So how is it now that Barney Ross has come to save the day?
I had to fake my own death to open up a classified file, driving Marsh out of hiding so I could prove he's Ocelot.
Yep, it was all part of an elaborate plan to reveal Andy Garcia was the Ocelot all along. And totally not an excuse for Stallone to get out of pretending to laugh at 50 Cent's incomprehensible action quips for an entire movie. Oh, and I'm pretty sure that Barney and Lee have just nuked off the world's entire fish population by having that bomb go off underwater. So, happy ending for everybody!
Ain't love beautiful?
But wait a minute. That means that Barney still has to explain who it was that burnt up to death behind the wheel of that plane.
Who the corpse is? You ever wonder what happened to Jumbo Shrimp?
Yes, folks, this is the actual ending to the past 13 years of the Expendables saga. A flashback of Barney Ross taking the unconscious body of that biker Jumbo Shrimp wearing a similar skull ring and set of military fatigues to take Barney's place while Stallone jumps off the plane and Jumbo Shrimp gets boiled alive, much like actual Jumbo Shrimp.
You did?
Oh, yes, I did.
No, Thin Lizzy, the boys are not back in town. Not only was this Jumbo Shrimp guy barely enough of a character to justify him senselessly dying in Barney's place, but while the Expendables have been established in these movies as morally ambiguous soldiers of fortune who kill people and blow up things without any questions, they have never gone to these cartoonishly assholish lengths.
You are a selfish prick. We have to be. We do this for money. We do this for money.
And it certainly doesn't close out the last remaining franchise that Stallone has had left on an appropriately epic or emotional note. How is it that for a franchise called The Expendables, we have only had one single member of this team die on screen, and it was Liam fucking Hemsworth? I'm starting to think that the lyrics in the theme song from the first movie's trailer were nothing more than a complete lie.
Every one of us is expendable.
We do this for money?
Only the second Expendables from 2012 has actually lived up the closest to the potential that an Avengers-type supergroup of action movie stars from the past and present should actually have. But this fourth film, which originally had the way better title of The Expendables: A Christmas Story, is a new low, not just for this series, but for action movies as a genre. In a time when John Wick and Mission Impossible are able to still deliver explosive action and great fight choreography, despite their lead actors now being in their 60s themselves, there's no excuse for Expendables 4 to be this poorly executed, even if it is arriving 9 years too late, with Stallone giving a cameo just as half-assed as the movie's editing and effects, and the entire Expendables gimmick being ignored for most of the film. If the Expendables will indeed die when they're dead like this stupid tagline promises, then I would say that Expendables has left this team pretty well dead for good. Terry Crews, would you like to do the honors of blowing apart this cinematic turd?
Rest in pieces.
On the enjoyableness continuum scale from Bull to Bruce, Expendables 4 is a film that would be below even the standards of Steven Seagal, and reloads its chamber with an Expend 3 Bulls out of Expend 10 Bulls. Ending on this flameout of a finale is a bunch of Expenda bullshit. I'm Jesse Shade for JoBlo.com, and thanks again for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the JoBlo Originals channel. Tell all your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company that appreciates all of your support. And now that the holidays are here again, it's time to find an awfully good holiday movie to review, and I think I may have found just the right one.
An expendable Christmas.
They put it together for Santa. You're welcome. Unbelievable. Oh!
You sold him out so you can be on top.
Oh, back off. She wouldn't do that.
What? Fuck him on top?
Fuck you.